there were facts shared, etc. Instead, they never shared any of that in the entire segment. She just called black people murderers and said that they were the most murderous group in America by race.
First of all, Candace Owens did not just call black people murderers. It's always very telling whenever you get into these discussions of crime and who's committing the most crime, what demographics are overrepresented in the crime statistics, that people like Cenk can't argue the facts, they can't argue the points, so they have to rely on misquoting the person and saying things that are crazy, like Candace Owens just called all black people murderers. She did not say that at all. If you take that from her, it's because you're a coward and you don't want to address what she actually said. Also, Cenk's emphasis on her saying by race when she totally said by rate is absolutely hilarious, and it just goes to show you that there's no standards. This is basically the Sarah Palin thing all over again, and I wait to see a retraction from Cenk Uygur on his absolute lie right here.
So that is exactly why they bring out Candace Owens, because Tucker Carlson wants to call black Americans murdering savages, but he knows he can't do that. So he's like, that's what we pay Candace for.
Again, the absolute discomfort that people on the left like Cenk have in discussing black crime is absolutely palpable. Cenk just brought in the word savages out of nowhere. I know he said that Tucker wants to call black people murderous savages, but he can't do it, so that's why they hire Candace Owens to do it. But the only people who brought in that word into the conversation is Cenk Uygur. He's the one who has that on his mind. He's the one who associates the word savage with black people, and that's really more indicative of Cenk Uygur's mental process, his thought process, how he goes about discovering the world, than anything else from Candace Owens or from Tucker Carlson.
He's like, that's what we pay Candace for. Hey, Candace, come here, come here. Now call all black people murderous by race, okay? The most murderous by race.
Again, who's the racist here? I'm a little bit confused. Cenk saying, come here, Candace, come here, where like she's basically a dog coming at the beck and call of Tucker Carlson, who's a stand-in for the white man, is indication of Cenk's beliefs about how black people can't hold certain factually based opinions without being controlled by white people. So maybe Cenk invoking the word savage is reflective of what he thinks of black people who actually speak for themselves against what he determines is appropriate for them to be able to say, more than anything else.
But again, if we're having that conversation, that's not even close. The most murderous by race in the history of America are white right-wingers by a landslide. They did slavery, they started the Civil War, they killed hundreds of thousands of Americans, they enslaved people. We can go on with all the crimes of white right-wingers by race. But we don't do that either. We give you the context. We give you the context of slavery, and we don't blame all white people. But that's not what Fox News does. Fox News goes, Candace Owens, we're paying you to come out here and say terrible things about the people in your own race.
So now Cenk says, if we're gonna go by race, white right-wingers are the most violent in American history. They did slavery. Again, we're going back to slavery and somehow pinning it on the American conservative movement now. Ridiculous. And they did the Civil War. Of course, Cenk doesn't acknowledge that white people fought to end slavery in this nation, and white people fought to end slavery worldwide. The British Empire is well known for this. They had to go into Africa, which, by the way, more slaves from Africa were held in Africa than anywhere else. They had to go into the Middle East, which, by the way, more slaves from Africa and from Europe were held in the Middle East than anywhere else, and liberate those people because we decided as a Western civilization, and really the British decided, not the Americans, can't really steal all the credit for that, that this was an immoral practice and it needed to be ended worldwide. And the Americans, when they abolished slavery, joined in. The French, when they abolished slavery, joined in. So if you're actually going to break it down about who started slavery, that's been around in human history. But if you want to talk about who ended slavery, the British Empire gets an unquestioned gold star in that regard because they were leaders in the world in doing so. So absolutely ridiculous. Also, Cenk mentions a civil war. Like, there aren't civil wars in Africa raging constantly. It's absurd.
Right-wingers by race.
And finally, this is all based on Cenk saying by race instead of by rate. We're talking about murder rate. We're not talking about wars or anything like that. we're discussing straight up murder rate. And what's amazing about this, what's stunning about this, is that the overwhelming majority of victims, and I know this is played out to say, of black homicide are black people. So Cenk is so much in denial that he's willing to let black people die so that way he doesn't have to face the truth about how many murderers are in the black community. It's absolutely absurd. If you wanted to help black people, you would want to remove these murderers from their community because they're disrupting the whole area. We've talked about multiple different times how it's psychologically damaging to have people just killed in your neighborhood or killed in your family, how it breaks faith in the system when gang leaders are the ones that are basically calling the shots in your area. But Cenk doesn't want to face any of that because he thinks this might look poorly on black people, and he doesn't want to ever do that in under any circumstances at all, even when it's warranted, because white people there was some slavery in American history. I don't know if you know that. This is slavery, white right wingers, the white right wing race did all of it.
By the way, she doesn't believe a word of it. She earlier in her life sued for racial harassment. So when it was to her advantage, she's like, give me money, give me money, give me money. Oh, I believe in racial harassment and racism is terrible. Now Fox News is giving her money and all of these other outlets and right-wing billionaires are giving her money. So she's like, oh, there's no racism except by black people. They hate white people and they're murderers.
So Cenk talks about Candace Owens filing a discrimination lawsuit when she was in high school. And he says, look, she doesn't believe any of this because she filed for racial discrimination. Then he talks about Candace Owens saying that there's no racism ever except by black people. These are things that Candace Owens never said, and pointing out the homicide rate among black Americans and suing at one point in your life for racial discrimination are not two conflicting things. But just to double down, just to triple down, just to cement that Cenk Uygur is the racist in this scenario, get a load of how he closes out what he's about to say about Candace Owens.
Well, look, in the past, they would bring you into the house. Now they pay you so you can buy your own house. Yeah, I said it, Candace.
In the old days, they let you live in the house, and now they pay you enough money so that you can buy your own house. Cenk is comparing Candace Owens to a slave, a house N-word, if you're not familiar with the term. It's absolutely disgusting, and the vitriol that is coming off of this man is insane. If any single white person that was a Republican described a black person and their undying allegiance to the Democratic Party in any similar way, Cenk would be flipping out, raging out, calling them racist, demanding they be fired, demanding they be forced to resign, demanding all manner of consequences against this person's life. But since it's Candace Owens, and Candace Owens said true things that Cenk is uncomfortable by, he's perfectly comfortable unleashing his racial hatred against her because he thinks that he speaks for the true black experience because he's parroting left-wing talking points about black people never doing anything wrong.
Yeah, I said it, Candace. You're the worst of the worst. You're a sellout of extraordinary, by extraordinary measures, calling all black people murderers the way that you just did right there by race. You're scum of the earth. None of that money is worth it. None of it is worth it. If you sleep at night, you're an even worse monster than I imagined.
Again, Cenk's like, that's right, I said it. I said this unbelievably racist thing. You're saying all black people are murderers. Again, Cenk can't ever address the point at hand. He can't ever talk about what she actually said. And then he's like, by race. Cenk, think about sentence structure. Think about how people communicate in the English language. I know you don't think very highly of black people and black women in particular based on the way that you're covering Candace Owens. But why would Candace Owens say black people are the most murderous by race and not rate? And by the way, the T is very well emphasized. You can even hear it clearly in your video. Why would you think that she would need to do that if you're already talking about black people, aka a racial category? What's wrong with you? And you're screaming at the camera, you raging out, you flaming out, isn't going to cover up for the fact that you have no counter argument against anything Candace Owens said because you cannot counter the crime statistics. You can only deny, you can only deflect, you can only deceive because that's the move that left-wingers use in order to get around facing reality. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, you can show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social